The crystal chandeliers glittered above the exclusive restaurant, where billionaire Charles Wentworth dined with investors over a bottle of vintage wine. Cameras from lurking paparazzi snapped as he laughed, his presence commanding the room. But in the corner, a quiet black teenager in a simple hoodie cleared tables, ignored by most guests. His name was Jamal, and he moved quickly, silently, his eyes avoiding contact. No one noticed the way his jaw tightened when 4 men in leather jackets stalked into the restaurant, their energy dark and violent. They didn't come for the food. Their eyes were locked on Charles. The attack was sudden. One of the men flipped the table, shattering glasses and scattering silverware. Another grabbed Charles by the collar, yanking him from his chair. Gasps filled the air as terrified diners scrambled. The billionaire's bodyguards, always present, had mysteriously vanished, as though the ambush had been carefully planned. Charles, red-faced and choking, could barely shout before a fist smashed into his ribs.
"This is for what you did,"
one attacker growled. But before anyone could call for help, Jamal froze in place, his tray clattering to the ground. His chest heaved, his fists clenched. Something inside him snapped. The men didn't notice him at first. They dragged Charles toward the floor, one drawing a blade gleaming under the chandeliers. Women screamed. A waiter fainted. The billionaire whimpered, his reputation for power crumbling in the grip of street brutality. But Jamal's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. "Let him go!" Heads turned. Diners gawked. The attackers sneered at the boy in the hoodie. "Or what?" one spat. But then their bravado faltered just slightly. Recognition flickered across one man's face. His grip slackened. "Wait," he muttered. "That kid... No, it can't be." Jamal stepped forward, his hood slipping back. His eyes burned with a mix of fury and authority. "I said let him go." The lead attacker's jaw dropped. That's Marcus Carter's son," he whispered, horror flashing across his features. The name hit the room like an explosion. Marcus Carter, legendary ex-military commander turned security mogul, known across the country for dismantling entire crime rings. The attackers froze because they knew Marcus Carter's reputation wasn't built on rumor. It was built on scars, battles, and merciless victories. And if this teenager was his son, then hurting him, or anyone he defended, meant war. Charles wheezed on the ground, eyes bulging as he processed the name. "Carter?" he croaked. His mind reeled. He remembered Marcus Carter, an old ally, a man who once saved his life during a violent hostage crisis years ago. But Carter had vanished into obscurity, leaving whispers of a new life hidden from fame. Could this boy truly be his son? Meanwhile, the 4 men exchanged frantic looks. We didn't know," one stammered. Jamal's voice hardened. "That's your problem. You never know who you're messing with." He bent down, helping Charles to his feet. For the first time, the billionaire leaned on someone else for survival. The attackers backed away, but Jamal didn't let them flee. His father's lessons rang in his head. Never let wolves escape to hunt again. He squared his shoulders, his posture suddenly echoing the soldier Marcus Carter had once been. "Apologize," he ordered. The men laughed nervously, but fear trembled in their voices. "Kid, you don't understand." Before they could finish, Jamal's hand shot out, knocking the knife from one man's grip with lightning precision. Gasps erupted as the blade clattered across marble. "I understand perfectly," Jamal said. "You thought he was alone." "He isn't." Even Charles felt a chill at the boy's steel. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the police. The 4 men bolted, shoving through the exit. Diners collapsed into relieved sobs, phones raised to capture every second. Charles clutched Jamal's shoulder. "Who are you?" he demanded, breathless. Jamal didn't answer right away. He helped a shaken waitress up, murmuring reassurance, his composure unnervingly calm for a teenager. Finally, he turned to the billionaire. "I'm nobody," he said softly. But the look in his eyes contradicted the words. Charles saw not a nobody, but a young man carrying the weight of a legacy more powerful than any fortune. The police stormed in, but the chaos was already over. Officers restrained the attackers outside, who kept shouting about how they hadn't known, how no one told them Marcus Carter's bloodline still walked the earth. The chief glanced at Jamal with an expression that was half respect, half fear. Charles stood silently, his tie torn, his pride shattered, but his heart thundering with gratitude. He realized that this boy had saved him when no money, no guards, no power could. He leaned close, whispering, "Your father saved my life once. Tonight you saved it again." Jamal's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The world would soon know. By morning, every news channel would broadcast the headline, "Billionaire saved by mysterious teen, revealed as son of legendary captain." Questions would swirl. Where had Marcus Carter gone? Why had his son been hiding in plain sight as a restaurant busboy? Charles, overwhelmed, saw an opportunity, an alliance that could reshape his empire. "You shouldn't be cleaning tables," he said firmly. "You belong beside leaders." "Beside me?" Jamal shook his head. "I don't need your empire. My father taught me something money can't buy." Charles frowned. "What's that?" Jamal's answer was quiet but unshakable. "Honor." For Charles Wentworth, that night changed everything. He had been attacked, humiliated, saved not by his wealth, but by a boy the world dismissed. Jamal walked away before the cameras swarmed, disappearing into the night, his name now echoing in powerful circles. The billionaire stood at the shattered table, his reflection fractured in broken glass, haunted by one thought: power is nothing without loyalty. And loyalty had come not from his bodyguards, not from his friends, but from the son of a man who once taught him survival. For the first time in his gilded life, Charles felt humbled and forever indebted. Charles didn't sleep that night. The memory of Jamal standing like a shield before him replayed endlessly. He had seen courage before, in war zones and boardrooms, but nothing like this. A teenager facing grown men with a soldier's fire in his eyes. By morning, Charles's mansion buzzed with calls. Investors wanted to know if he was safe. Journalists demanded statements. Security firms offered reinforcements. But Charles ignored them all. He had only one thought: find the boy. He needed answers. Why was Marcus Carter's son clearing tables in a restaurant when his father's name still carried fear and reverence? 2 days later, Charles' black limousine rolled through a modest neighborhood far from marble mansions. Children played on cracked sidewalks, laughter ringing against peeling walls. His driver stopped before a small, weather-beaten house, and there on the porch stood Marcus Carter himself. Time had streaked his hair with gray, but his frame remained unyielding, his presence as commanding as ever. Charles stepped out, suddenly feeling smaller than he ever had in skyscrapers. Marcus's eyes narrowed. "You brought trouble into my son's life," he said coldly. No greeting, no handshake, just a soldier's truth, sharp as a blade. Charles stammered. "Marcus, I didn't know." "Jamal, But Marcus cut him off with a raised hand. "You don't say his name. He is not your story to tell." His voice carried quiet thunder, the kind that silences battlefields. Jamal appeared in the doorway, hoodie pulled up, gaze wary. His father's hand rested protectively on his shoulder. "You've dragged cameras to my doorstep," Marcus continued, voice hard. "My son wanted a normal life. He wanted to be judged for his work, not my reputation. And now, he's a headline." Charles swallowed, shame pressing against his throat like a vice. But then Jamal spoke, his voice steady. "Dad, I couldn't stand there and do nothing. He was going to die." Marcus's jaw clenched, torn between pride and fear. "And what if they'd killed you, Jamal?" "Do you know what that would have meant?" His son's gaze didn't waver. "It would have meant I tried." "Isn't that what you taught me?" The words hung heavy in the air. For the first time, Charles saw Marcus falter, his iron resolve softening in his eyes. A soldier's training had been passed down, but so had a soldier's heart. Charles stepped closer, desperation leaking through his polished facade. "Marcus, I owe him my life. I owe you again. Let me do something. Anything. He deserves more than scrubbing dishes in back rooms." Jamal bristled, but Marcus's hand tightened on his shoulder, steadying him. "He doesn't need your empire," Marcus said flatly. "He needs space to grow into his own man, without being paraded, without being bought." The last word cut deep and Charles winced. He had never felt money sound so ugly. But Marcus wasn't finished. "If you really want to repay him, don't turn him into another tool for power." That night, Charles couldn't shake the conversation. In the boardroom, his investors pressed him harder. "Leverage the story," they urged. "A partnership with Carter's son could boost our security division, strengthen our brand." But Charles slammed his fist on the table. "He is not a brand. He is a boy who saved my life. That's where it ends." The room fell silent. For once, the billionaire wasn't thinking of profits. He was thinking of honor. The same word Jamal had spoken in the restaurant, echoing now like a command. Something inside Charles shifted, a seed planted by a boy's courage. But trouble wasn't done. The 4 attackers, now in custody, refused to reveal who had sent them. Rumors spread of a rival syndicate, angered by Charles's recent business expansion. And now, whispers linked Jamal's name to the story. Anonymous threats trickled toward Marcus's modest home. Charles's stomach twisted. He had endangered not just himself, but Marcus's family. For the first time in his life, he felt powerless with all his billions. Sitting alone in his mansion, he realized what had to be done. He couldn't shield them from afar. He had to stand beside them, not as a billionaire, but as a man. Days later, Charles returned to Marcus's doorstep, not in a limousine this time, but on foot, dressed simply. He bowed his head slightly, an unthinkable gesture for a man of his stature. "I've put you in danger," he admitted. "Let me fix it. Not with money, with loyalty." Marcus studied him, measuring every syllable. Jamal watched silently from the doorway, his arms folded. Finally, Marcus spoke. "Loyalty isn't declared in speeches, Charles. It's proven in battle." Charles met his gaze. "Then give me one." The air between them bristled with old history, unspoken scars, and the possibility of trust rebuilt. The test came sooner than expected. One night, Marcus's house was targeted, shadows moving in the yard, glass shattering as intruders crept inside. Jamal froze at the top of the stairs, fear clashing with training. But before Marcus could act, Charles burst forward, wielding nothing but a fireplace poker. He fought like a man with nothing to lose, defending the home as if it were his own. By the time the police arrived, the attackers were restrained on the floor, Marcus and Charles standing shoulder to shoulder, chests heaving. Jamal stared in awe. For the first time, his father and the billionaire weren't at odds. They were allies. In the aftermath, silence filled the living room, broken only by the wail of sirens outside. Marcus looked at Charles, sweat glistening on both men. Slowly, deliberately, he extended his hand. "Maybe you've changed," he said quietly. Charles gripped it, emotion burning in his throat. Jamal's eyes softened, the mistrust fading. That night, 3 men stood together. One forged by war, one hardened by wealth, and one just beginning his path. The world would remember the billionaire's rescue, but within those walls, something greater was born. A bond of loyalty, honor, and family that no fortune could ever buy.